They called it the wedding of the year. A grand celebration between two powerful families. The bride? A beautiful, well-bred woman with grace and poise. The groom? One of Ghana's wealthiest young moguls. Cameras were ready. Guests were seated. The music had started. But just when the officiant was about to say, "Here comes the bride," she was nowhere to be found. I was that bride. And let me tell you something. I didn't run away because I was afraid of marriage. I ran because I was afraid of him. My name is Jane, and this is the story of how I disappeared on the day the world expected me to walk down the aisle. Growing up, I was the picture of perfection. Daughter of Honorable Mensa, the politician everyone respected and feared. I had the best education, the best clothes, the best connections, but not the freedom to choose anything for myself. Including love. When I met Mark, everyone said I had hit the jackpot. He was charming, rich, and well-connected. My father called him a strategic alliance. My mother called him a dream come true. But deep inside, I knew the truth. He wasn't a man. He was a trap with a Rolex and a cologne that masked danger. The public adored him. On TV, he was generous and articulate. He sponsored youth foundations, donated to orphanages, and gave motivational speeches about hard work. But behind closed doors, he was a control freak. He'd question every friend I spoke to. Criticize my laugh for being too loud. He once smashed my phone because I replied a thank you to a male classmate who complimented my dress. And each time I complained, my mother would say, "You'll understand, marriage is about patience. He's just protective." Protective? No. He was poisonous. But I was already too deep in. The wedding invitations were printed. The media was already buzzing. My father's political opponents were waiting to see what would go wrong. So I played along. Like a well-trained puppet. Until fate stepped in. It was 5 days to the wedding. I went to the airport to pick up a fabric shipment for the bridal team. And that's when I saw him. Kobe. My first love. My only real love. We hadn't seen each other in 3 years. We met in university. Fell in love over late-night watche and study sessions. He was kind, gentle, and real. But he came from nothing. And my father made sure he stayed that way. One morning, he had Kobe arrested for trespassing, just for walking me home. He threatened his family, paid his way into a new job in the north, and made him disappear from my life like a bad dream. But now, there he stood, holding a briefcase, staring at me like I was still the girl he once knew. "Jane," he whispered. I froze. I wanted to cry. To scream. To run into his arms. Instead, I smiled politely and said, "Kobe, it's been a while." We talked. 4 hours. Sitting in his car, parked by the roadside, while the world outside moved on like nothing was happening. I told him everything. About Mark, about the wedding, about the fear I carried every night. He didn't say much. Just listened. And when I finished, he took a deep breath and said the words that would change everything. "You don't have to marry him. If you want to leave, I'll help you disappear." I laughed, half joking. But deep down, I knew I wanted that. Not just to run from Mark, but to run back to myself. The next few days were a blur of rehearsals and fake smiles. Everyone said I looked radiant. They didn't know I was dying inside. The night before the wedding, I called Kobe and said, "I'm ready." At exactly 9 a.m. on my wedding day, I stood in front of the mirror in my wedding gown, surrounded by makeup artists and photographers. I told them I needed a moment alone. I stepped out of the dressing room, walked past the garden filled with roses, past the fountain where guests were gathering. My heart pounded like thunder in my chest. My veil flew off. My shoes nearly broke. But I kept walking. And outside the gate was a yellow taxi. Kobe was in the back seat. He looked at me, bride gown and all, and said, "You sure?" I nodded. He opened the door. And we drove. The media went wild. Bride vanishes on her wedding day. Mark-Jane union collapses in scandal. My father disowned me that same night. My mother sent me a voice note, sobbing that I had ruined the family name. And Mark? He didn't speak to the press. But I heard through someone in his security team, he broke every piece of glass in his mansion. Kobe and I escaped to a small village near the coast. No smartphones. No cameras. Just peace. He rented a small room above a fish shop, and I worked at a roadside canteen. For the first time in years, I laughed freely. He called me his queen, even when I smelled of smoke and onions. I thought my nightmare was over. Until it returned. One evening, I got a knock on the door. A young boy handed me a piece of paper. No name. Just a phone number. I called it. And when I heard the voice on the other end, I dropped the phone. "Mark. You think you can humiliate me and hide in some godforsaken village? Don't worry. I always get what's mine." I started packing immediately. Kobe told me not to panic. That he would handle it. He said we'd leave the country. Start a new life. But the next morning, he was gone. No note. No message. Just gone. I waited for hours. Then days. Then a week. Finally, someone slipped another note under my door. "Next time, listen before you run." I broke down. I cried like a child. Had Mark found him? Had him? Killed him? I'll never know. All I know is that I loved two men in my life. One I escaped from. The other disappeared while trying to save me. Now, I live in another town under a different name. I teach little girls how to read. I walk barefoot in the rain. I pray for Kobe every night. Sometimes, I think I see him in crowds. I turn quickly. But it's never him. They call me a runaway bride. But I say, I'm a woman who finally chose herself. Because sometimes, walking away isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing you'll ever do. If you were in Jane's shoes, would you have run? Would you stay and suffer, or risk it all for freedom? Let us know in the comments. And if this story gave you chills, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell, because more gripping stories are on the way.